day to each and everyone, especially to you, Ma'am Piloton. I am Crisel Ayuban, and today I will be discussing you the chapter 4, lesson 4, which is all about Neo-Behaviorism. But before that, let us know our objective first. In this lesson, we will able to distinguish Neo-Behaviorism by Tolman and Bandura, relate the salient features of Tolman's purposive behaviorism and Bandura's social cognitive theory to actual teaching, and analyze detailed lesson plans using the principles of Tolman's purposive behaviorism and Bandura's social cognitive theory. So, do you know who is Edward Tolman? Edward Tolman was an American psychologist who developed a system of psychology, and he is best known for his influence on cognitive behaviorism, his research on cognitive maps, the theory of latent learning, and the concept of intervening variables. How about Albert Bandura? Have you ever heard his name? Albert Bandura is a Canadian-born American psychologist and originator of social cognitive theory, who is probably best known for his modeling on aggression. So, since we already know the two psychologists, let us proceed to our lesson. What is Neo-Behaviorism? Is there anyone who can answer? Alright, so Neo-Behaviorism, based on the module, is a sub-branch came out to fill in the gap between behaviorism and cognitive learning beliefs. It is where more self-consciously trying to formalize the laws of behavior, and it is believed by Tolman and Bandura that some mediating variables into the establishment of stimulus-response theory contribute much to learning. So in short, Neo-Behaviorism is like a bridge that connects the two variables, which is behaviorism and cognitive learning beliefs. Since we already know what is Neo-Behaviorism, let's move on to Tolman's purposive behaviorism. So, Tolman believed that learning is a cognitive process and is acquired through meaningful behavior. And it is known for his goal-directedness, cognitive map, latent learning, and intervening variables. So in his best-known goal-directedness, it is where an individual do or act on beliefs, attitudes, changing conditions, and strive hard towards goal. In short, despite of all the distractions that a person encounter, if a person remains his focus on that certain goal, that distraction is not a hindrance in achieving or to achieve a person's goal or to achieve his or her goal. So, the next one is cognitive map. It is where individuals develop a mental representations of information, or it is like a picture. For example, in Tolman's experiment, the rats were put in maze for 17 days. The first group of rats was fed, rewarded every time they found their way out. The second group of rats was non-reinforced. The rats did not receive any food from days 1 to 10, even if they have seen the end point. Later, it was observed that in the first 10 days, the rats developed a cognitive map. Hence, from day 11 onward, they were motivated to perform and look for the end point faster than the first group to find food because they were hungry. So the rats develop a cognitive map. To better understand this, let's have another example. So, if a person wants to achieve something or a goal, he or she will create or develop an idea and strive harder to achieve that goal. So, in relation to the experiment of Tolman, the rats discovered or developed a cognitive map because of their courage to find the exit way. So we have latent learning. It is a learning that remains or stays the individual until needed and that occurs without any visible reinforcement of the behavior that are learned. So, just like in his experiment, the rats develop a cognitive map from wandering the mazes, and from the moment that the rats have developed, they can easily find their way out since they already developed a cognitive map. And the last one is intervening variables. Variables that are not readily seen but serves as determinants of behavior. So, also refer to the experiment of Tolman, like the hunger rats, where the hunger or the word hunger is an intervening variable since it is not readily seen, and because of that, they develop a cognitive map. So we also have here the Tolman's other salient principle, which are the behavior is always purposive, behavior is cognitive, and reinforce establishes and confirm expectancies. So the first one is behavior is always purposive, means that all behavior is ignited to accomplish a specific goal. So from the word purposive, every behavior has a reason or a purpose to accomplish a specific goal, and that is behavior is always purposive. We have behavior is cognitive, means that an organism is mindful of the connections between specific actions and certain outcome or cognitive map. In other words, we are conscious of our behavior, like in Tolman's experiment, wherein developing cognitive map is the result of their actions or the actions of the rats. The third one is reinforcement establishes and confirms expectancies. Tolman underscored the role of reinforcement in learning. As previously stated, learning, according to Tolman, deals with the connection between stimuli and expectancies developed in situations in which reinforcement is possible. The role of reinforcement is primarily one of confirming expectancies. So, reinforcement is one way in confirming or verifying expectancies. Expectancies, which means the state of thinking or hoping that something will happen. And that's what Tolman's purposive behaviorism and other salient principle all about. And now, let's move on to the last psychologist, who is Albert Bandura, in his social learning theory. But before that, let's go back to our childhood and think. Do you remember how to ride a bicycle? Or do you remember learning how to ride a bicycle? I bet you have learned it just by watching or observing others, right? And that's what the social learning theory of Albert Bandura believes. He states that learning occurs within a social context and by observing or copying others' behavior or imitating. So in simpler way, we learn by observing our environment and imitating with others. So we have a crucial component of Bandura, which is modeling. Modeling refers to a change of one's behavior by observing models. So just like what I have said earlier, we learn by observing others, and that is modeling. And the models also refers to the individuals like a teacher, parents, or even we, the students. Additionally, the term self-efficacy has bridged social learning theory and cognitive psychology. So this refers or defined as one's evaluation of his or her own ability to accomplish or perform an action in a particular context. So, we have the following fundamental principles of social learning theory. There are 8 of them and we will discuss it orderly. The first one is, one may learn without changing his or her behavior. So we can learn without changing our behavior. I know this is very understandable, so let's move on to the second one, or the second principle. The second principle is learning takes place by imitating a model. This means that if a model or a person possesses positive characteristics and desirable, one learners will surely imitate them, and admiration plays an essential role in imitating a particular behavior of model. So, if a model possesses a good characteristic, the observer will imitate them. The third one is, an observing person will always react to the one being imitated depending on whether the model is rewarded or punished. For example, if a model receives reward, the other person or the imitator will also follow the behavior, but it depends if the model is being rewarded or punished. The fourth one is, acquiring and performing behavior are different. This means that one can acquire the behavior by observing someone but opt not to perform it until the context requires to. The fifth one is, interaction is vital for successful social learning. Social learning may occur successfully when learners interact with their co-learners and models. So in other words, if we interact with others, social learning occurs or happen. The sixth one is, learning is self-regulated. So according to Bandura, he noted that self-regulation occurs or happen when individuals observe, assess, and adjust their behaviors against their standards and then reward and punish them. Or it is a process that involves setting goals of a students where they actively engage. The seventh one is, learning may be acquired vicariously. So vicarious learning is acquired from observing the consequences of others' behavior. So for example, the model was being praised and rewarded. So as a learner or observer, I will likely to repeat or follow the behavior of a model since I feel satisfied in his or her behavior. So the last one is, learning may be reinforced by the model or by others. So reinforced, by the way, means that being strengthened or support. So if someone complements a model, that model would likely to strengthen the occurrence behavior or increase his or her behavior. And that's what the fundamental principles of social learning theory of Albert Bandura all about. And now, let's continue to the last part of our lesson, which are the components of successful modeling. Now, let me ask you a question before we proceed. Do you know how many components of successful modeling Albert Bandura has? Then what are those? Alright, there are 4 components of successful modeling Albert Bandura has, and these are attention, retention, production, and motivation. So let's talk about the attention. To meaningfully perceive relevant behavior, one should pay attention. So paying attention is very crucial. So this is the reason why a model or a teacher makes use of bright colors or large fonts in their instructional aids for modeling to snatch the attention of the learners. In other words, they do it, or the teachers do it, to focus our attention to what the model or a teacher have been discussed or being instructed. Next is retention. Retention. Paying attention to something should result in retention that requires cognitively organizing, rehearsing, coding, and transforming modeled information for a storage in memory. So for our information, rehearsal plays a vital role in retention. For instance, in advanced class, an observer counts 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 with corresponding steps to store or keep the dance steps in his or her memory. So, retention, so with the help of rehearsing, we can able to store or keep the information in our memory. And that is retention. So we have production. To strengthen learning through observation, one needs to translate the vital and symbolic conceptions into observable behavior. Subsequent production of this behavior indicate an increased learning. So without this, or without translating the visual and symbolic conceptions, one may experience difficulty in translating coded information in memory into overt action. So without translating the visual or the symbolic conceptions, we may feel difficult in translating the ideas or information. So the last is motivation. Influencing observational learning is motivation. So from the word motivation is where an individual is motivated to do an action or behavior in which they believe will result in rewarding outcomes and avoid acting in ways they think will be responded to negatively. So for instance, motivation is a critical process of observational learning that teachers promote in various ways, including making learning interesting, relating materials to students' interest, having students set goals and monitor goal progress, providing feedback indicating increasing competence, and stressing the value of learning. And that's what the Albert Bandura social learning theory, its fundamental principles and components of a successful modeling. So, to wrap up everything that I have discussed or that I have been discussed, Neo-Behaviorism emerged to bridge the gap between behaviorism and cognitism. It disputed the behaviorist assumptions by explaining that an active cognitive process helps individuals to learn other than just becoming a passive learner. Tolman postulated the purposive behaviorism theory, believing that learning is always goal-oriented. Bandura, meanwhile, advanced his learning through modeling or social cognitive theory. He underscored the importance of self-efficacy and process of learning by observation, such as theories by observation. Such theories have many teaching applications to facilitate learner-centered classes. And that would be all, and that ends the chapter for lesson 4 about Neo-Behaviorism. Thank you and God bless.